Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our episode of Better Together, the podcast where it shares the stories, lessons, and practical advice from founders and leaders that can help you improve your business. I'm your host, Kelly Sunsvold, along with my partner in business and life, Sean Sunsvold. Today, we're joined by Emily Chapman, the founder of the Testimonial Collective. After spending years producing national commercials for brands like Whirlpool, Kingsford, AutoZone, and major healthcare organizations, Emily found herself craving something more meaningful than a big budget production and her corporate red tape. She took a leap into entrepreneurship and built a business focused on authentic customer stories that help companies build trust and drive conversation. Today, we'll talk about leaving the corporate world, finding fulfillment through entrepreneurship, and why human stories are still one of the most powerful marketing tools available. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I really enjoyed our intro call. I was going back to review that before our conversation today, and I just think you have something very unique that you've created, and I'm excited to dig into it and hear more about it today and share it with our listeners.
Yeah.
So before we start that part, take us back to your corporate career. When was the moment, or was there a moment that you realized that national campaigns were just not as fulfilling as they once were?
Yeah. Well, it was always my dream to be a commercial editor for years and years. And that's what I had trained to do. And I was in that industry for almost 14 years. And as I kind of, became more and more successful in that industry, something started to just feel off. I think intuitively it started as a whisper. And by the end, it was more of a yell of this is not where you're supposed to be. But it was a confusing time because I had always thought this was my dream to edit TV commercials. And I think, the moment was when I walked into the gym. And you know how they have multiple TVs up? I remember seeing more than one of my commercials on the television during that gym session, and I felt nothing. Like I didn't feel excited about it. I didn't feel proud. And a lot of that was because as you kind of climb that ladder, getting to work on certain campaigns and with certain brands, there is, like you mentioned, a lot of red tape, a lot of restrictions. And then especially if you go into the medical realm, it's 10x over there. And so the creative freedom was really removed from it. And I started to feel like a professional button pusher. And it was really disheartening. And I felt honestly a little bit scared because I thought I trained my whole life for this. Like, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
But that moment was when I knew it wasn't for me anymore.
Yeah, that's got to be really interesting. Like, you're sitting there, you're looking at the, whatever comes on TV commercials wise, and you're sitting there going, I made that commercial. I made that commercial. You're seeing these things come up over and over again, and you just kind of talked about it there of like it just wasn't totally fulfilling for you, right? I'm like the button pusher again. So, like, why do you think that external success, and having these big commercials didn't really translate and hit home for you being like personally fulfilled in the work that you were doing?
I think it's because I knew intuitively that things weren't aligned, that there was something else I was supposed to be doing. And it was interesting because we would have client sessions where agencies would come in and my coworkers would get really excited about these sessions. And I just wasn't. And I thought, is something wrong with me? The other thing was, I would always say, I really don't like people telling me what to do. And everyone in the corporate world will say, well, that's what having a boss is. And, that makes sense. And I have nothing against the corporate world, but I always just felt like I want to be the one calling the shots. I want to be running this. But the idea of running my own business, because I'd only grown up around people who were in corporate or friends in corporate, that possibility never entered my mind for a really long time.
Yeah. So before launching the Testimonial Creative, you worked for a startup, right?
Yes. So I was with a startup for about a year. I had started to do my own thing in video away from corporate. And then a couple months into that, I ended up partnering with a startup. And I thought, okay, well, this will scratch the entrepreneurial itch. They've already got a very successful startup going. They need someone to build out their video department and management and teams. I had a lot of flexibility. The pay was great. Like it was totally remote. On paper, it was a very cush job, as I like to say. But I was there for a little under a year and I just felt like this still isn't it. This
Mm.
still isn't it.
Yeah.
And that was almost harder to leave because I did have it so made in a sense.
Mhm.
And at this point, I had a 2-year-old. It's not, and my husband, it's not like it's just me jumping ship. There were a lot of things at stake, but I just told my husband, like, I know this is just not meant for me anymore.
Yeah. You're a very creative person. I think you're right. The jump ship when you're an entrepreneur and you decide to make that leap, like it usually is it's more than you
Mhm.
at this point for you. And so what did that really teach you about entrepreneurship and what you really wanted out of life?
At that point, I mentioned earlier how everything had gone more from a whisper up to a yell at that point of this isn't aligned. And I think that just knowing that it was a greater pain to stay than it was
Mm.
for me to leave, even though it was scary and it was doing something I'd never done before. I think that the inner knowing and pain and of just staying was just too much. And
Mhm.
I just could not continue on that route.
Yeah, you mentioned the word scary, and I think I want to touch on that a little bit because as you know, Kelly and I started our own business.
Mhm.
We decided to make that jump. It had been sort of a side hustle type of thing for about 2.5 years, and then Kelly made the jump, and a couple months later, just circumstances happened, and I made the jump. So within like 2 months, we went from neither of us working full time on the business to both of us suddenly
Mhm.
working full time on the business, and all the things that you think about, like the finances, the leads, the marketing, the list goes on and on and on, right?
Health
So, and
insurance.
health
Oh.
and yeah, yeah, yeah. So like all those
Yes.
things, like it can be overwhelming. It can,
Mhm.
you use the word scary and I think it fits. So when you made that jump and, what was the biggest fear you had when deciding to go like, I'm going to do this myself? What was the biggest thing you were concerned about?
The biggest fear was that I would drain all my finances, go completely broke, and have to go back to a 9 to 5.
Mm.
That was the biggest fear, and I think that I'm gonna butcher the quote, but I saw someone write online something along the lines of, "Everyone in the corporate world, their biggest fear is being fired, but my biggest fear is having to go into the corporate world." And
Mm.
so it's that was it, just not making it, failing,
Mhm.
going completely
Yeah.
broke, and having to go back, like, with your tail between your legs, you know? And also, it's also scary not just making the jump, but when you publicly declare it, when you go on LinkedIn and say, "This is what I'm doing now," when you tell your friends and family. I mean, my parents were they were like, "You got a kid," But it's just, I think after things start happening and you start to get your first clients and people start to see, "Oh, this is kind of working." And it's not that you need that validation, but it starts to become more real and more like this is your new normal. And learning to function at that level. It's very different, but to me, I could work, 12, 14, 16-hour days on this. And yes, it's tiring, but it brings me joy. Whereas I could work 8 hours at a previous job and be exhausted because I'm so
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally drained of something I don't want to do.
Yeah, I think, and every new business kind of goes through it. I think when Kelly and I jumped into this, it sort of took us like about 9 months,
Hmm.
to really get our roles figured out and get financially where, clients were paying for our life and all that kind of stuff. If you don't mind me asking, how long did that take for you to kind of get to that point in your business where it went from like, oh my gosh, to, okay, I got this.
Breathe a little.
Yeah.
I mean, so technically, so it was August of last year that I went full, like that I left the startup, launched Testimonial Collective fully in like November. And I would say just in the past couple of months is
Mm.
where things started to kind of settle because the other thing is, like you said, you're doing everything, the finances, the admin, and so everything is a priority. I think even though I've always been really organized and type A, that prioritization of what's gonna bring in income was really difficult to manage at first because everything is urgent. Your website needs this,
Mhm.
this customer needs this. It's
Yeah.
and also starting to outsource. When I finally started to be able to have, like, other editors and things like that, that was really difficult for me because I'm so particular about how I want each testimonial to come out, and I review everything, and I'm very, it's a big deal to me. And so to let I I did a lot of tests with a lot of different editors. That was very stressful. But being able to now focus on the higher or more bird's eye view tasks has been a great shift for me.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So let's go into the building of the Testimonial Collective.
Yeah.
What problem did you see in the marketplace that really made you think there was room for a business focused on specifically on testimonial storytelling?
Yeah. Well, what happened was when I was originally full time with the video, I knew I wasn't going to be so general because that just dilutes a brand. I knew it had to be something I was passionate about. And I also, my favorite thing that I worked on when I was doing the commercials and other videos and things like that was actually the documentary work that I would do. Loved it. I loved that allows you to build real stories and things like that. That was not so restrictive, but those were a little more rare to come by just because in that industry, there's no money in those. So it's not, your post house doesn't really take them on a lot. And so I was networking, I was meeting with business owners, and I would, obviously go on people's websites as I would get to know them. And I noticed that either people didn't have video testimonials, or if they did, they were awful. And they were nobody, as much as I love somebody telling me 6 minutes of how much they loved working with us, nobody's going to come to my site and watch a 6-minute video. And
Right.
outside of that, I just realized I would see these and I thought if only they knew how to ask the right questions, they could reverse engineer these to get the right answers. And especially like I just could tell with the editing, I was like, if this was just woven this way, this would play out so much better. And I started looking into, I didn't want these to just be decorations on a website. I was like, I could make these conversion tools. I could really make these useful so that someone coming to your website looks at this testimonial and says, that's me. This company has solved that problem. They can solve it for me too, because that's me. Like, that's my problem. So, really getting into what moves the needle for businesses. And then when we started doing our exploratory sessions of getting into the business owner's ICP, getting into the kind of people they're trying to attract, what problems do they solve? And being able to like what hesitations do people have before working with them? Being able to answer those for the business owner by a happy customer before someone gets on the sales call with them is huge because you're
Yeah.
building trust before the call. So I just saw as I was going through things, I saw more and more potential as I dug deeper. And I was like, this could be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, just in thinking about the work of testimonials, I think and this will be really applicable to most of our audience because they're all small businesses, right?
Uh-huh.
Testimonials are gold, and I think
Uh-huh.
that's for any business, but especially for small businesses. And I think most people get the idea that, a testimonial is just somebody who's a happy customer coming
Yeah.
online and saying, "I love your product."
Yeah.
Right? But there's a lot more to a good testimonial,
Mhm.
right? So when you go into these companies, like what are most people getting wrong about testimonials? Because it is more than
Yeah.
just the, happy customer, yay,
Mhm.
tell, that.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. There's one is what you touched on already, where it's just generic praise that really goes nowhere because, outside of the videos, when people do Google reviews, like those are great, but everybody now has 5-star Google reviews. And so, and it's also, I'm sure it's a lot of real people on there, but people have a harder time trusting something that's text as opposed to someone sitting in their living room saying, this is what they really did for me. I think that a lot of companies aren't asking the right questions. And so they aren't getting the right answers that they're not keeping their potential customers in mind. They're just trying to think of good things that they can say about their company. The other thing that they should focus on more is metrics, like very key examples of, hey, we increased revenue by $15,000 this month. Or instead of they were organized. And I think it's more powerful. And I think Kelly and I may have talked about this when we were on a call before, but it's much more powerful to come to a website and see someone instead of saying, "Oh, it was great working with, the accountant um and her team, I don't know, Katie, this accountant Katie, it was great working with her team. They were very organized. They took care of us, as opposed to, before working with Katie, our finances were so messed up. We thought we were going to lose our house. We were under such stress. We did not know where to turn, and we felt like, very underwater. And she took us by the hand and she explained step by step exactly what we were going to do. She put us on a plan. And so having those specific details as well really start to illustrate a story that customers can see themselves in.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing there is, as you're talking about what really works is it's personalized,
Mhm.
right? Like it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
taking that person's situation of, here's where we were before and here's where we are after to really walk them through that change. And I love that. And I've got a testimonial to do for a client of ours.
Mhm.
And so I've got to do that. But as you're talking about that, I'm sitting here going, oh yeah, that'd be really good to say. That'd be good
Mhm.
to explain. I'm like, that would be really helpful for them. So
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And the other thing is when businesses think of their ideal customers, everybody has their niche, everybody has the people that they serve specifically. But I think they don't realize within those niches and those service areas, you've solved different problems for different people and different customers. And so being able to not just have one testimonial, but I would say 3 is the benchmark that I say is really solid because that's where you build credibility. And if you can touch on 3 different problems you've solved under that same triangle, the same niche, that's golden. Because also the other thing is sometimes people say, well, yeah, I've got a testimonial on my site. And that's great. I mean, I'm sure, I would rather go with one over none. But the problem is sometimes there's a red flag of if this company is so successful and doing so well, why is there only one? Is that their brother? Is that their cousin? Like that, people do question that sometimes. So if you can get 3 and you can get 3 different problems solved or hit 3 different demographics within your niche, that is ideal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're seeing this in our industry too. It's just
Mhm.
like this polished work versus a more human, intentional kind of look. So you made a choice to kind of move away from that highly polished production. Why do you believe that authenticity often outperforms perfection?
Yeah. So originally, when doing this, I looked into skeleton crews to go out and shoot these because you think, oh, you want this polished testimonial video, you want it to look professional. But we slowly started to realize that when you want to get a trusted review of something or you know, say you're asking a friend about a restaurant or a car dealership or things like that, you are much more likely to trust someone that you can sense is a real person. And that means someone sitting in their living room
Mhm.
discussing, their experience with this car service or this hotel or things like that, as opposed to they were brought on set, there's lights, there's makeup, like it feels very manufactured and people can sense that. And what's interesting is outside of testimonials, the recent shift in content online from super polished on social media to now that's more organic, get a look inside of my life because people want to feel that connection to that creator or that business. That human connection in the world of AI right now is so craved. And so to be able to bring that to the table and have people say, this was my real experience with this business, that's going to win customers over 10 times more than something that just happens to look nice on a set.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's such a shift that's happening. And I think, you're in such a unique industry, right? Like this isn't just like, I don't call it like, it doesn't really fall necessarily into marketing and it just kind of falls in its own place, right?
Mm.
So as you're trying to create awareness for your business, what has been a unique challenge for
Mhm.
you that you didn't realize was going to be a challenge?
I didn't realize how misunderstood testimonials are, honestly. And I think you touched on it earlier by saying, "Oh yeah, it's just record this happy video about this business." But when they're done well, when they're done right, they can bring in so much more business for a business. It's a matter of, and what's interesting is in the beginning when I was doing this, there was a lot of interest shown, but people wanted me, many times was asked to kind of make a version of this that was make as many as you can and just kind of, manufacture these out. And I almost compared it to like IKEA as opposed to handmade furniture,
Mm.
where I kept saying no to that, doing these in mass quantities, kind of just rifling through them, doing general questions, things like that, because that would make them like everyone else's. And I know testimonials is already a niche, very niche area, but for me, coming from my background, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. And so, yes, they're a little bit more, I would say it's a little bit more of an investment, but the point is to get more business. The point is not to be, like I said, a decoration on a website. And also outside of that, being able to give the clients a full breakdown of how to use these, not just throw them on your website, but where they can be used strategically so that you're getting more clients. And because that's the end goal. The end goal is not for me to make nice videos for people. It's for businesses to get more business. Like that is what keeps the engine going.
Yeah.
Results. And they know that they're doing everything right. It just feels like something is not moving. And so this is a very unique way to start to get that ball rolling as opposed to, kind of doing it how everybody else does it.
Yeah. Yeah. So just kind of thinking about where we are in the world right now, AI has been a big push the
Yeah.
last couple years and it's getting bigger and bigger. And, we see more and more stories about it. So we've got this, world full of AI generated content. Let's talk about like the authentic human stories versus like AI generated content.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's everything. I think that AI is excellent in terms like I use it in my business all the time in terms of efficiency or organization or expediting things, but I refuse to use it in the area of creating these. Like it's all human editors. Like in addition to the stories, it's story producers, all human. The interviews are all one-on-one real people. It's not just answer this list of questions. And like I said earlier, I think that in the world of AI, although it's exciting and I think it's can be used for a lot of great things, I think people are starting to crave that human connection. Um, and the trust is built so much more with the human connection. If you're not going to trust a bot or somebody AI generated nearly as much as a real person with their real story of what they experienced.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, kind of closing this up and heading towards that, what advice would you give someone who feels maybe creatively or professionally unfulfilled in their career? I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of chatter around that right now, especially within the Gen Z, millennial kind of generation, but maybe someone who feels afraid to make that jump. What advice would you give them?
I would tell them that, to follow their intuition and that if they're hearing those whispers, they're absolutely meant for more and they're absolutely capable. But it's taking that first step. It's the other thing is you don't have to have a perfect plan. You don't have to have even the perfect structure, but results come from messy action. And I'm sure you guys can say the exact same thing. In the
Mm.
beginning was so terrified and so feeling like, "Oh, I've never run a business before. I've been in video for 14 years, but I've never run a business. I don't know the first thing about accounting or like we're saying insurance and this." And you just take the step and then you learn from it. And whether it's a step and a failure, you still learn from it or a step in the right direction. It's just taking the step and following that knowing. And you'll absolutely start making progress and then start realizing like, okay, I can do this. And then you're like, why did I ever spend so long in that career?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, something that you've touched on there a little bit, but like an unwavering commitment to your
Mhm.
own success,
Yeah.
right?
And that's really commendable for you guys because you guys did it together. Like that is, because you also have kids and things like that. That is huge to say, okay, we're both in this.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really, really amazing as well. But yeah, I agree 100%. And it's
Yeah.
I think you've probably said this before. People have said that, you don't need to pay for therapy. Being an entrepreneur is like therapy on crack every day.
Yes.
You just
Yeah.
get slapped in the face with reality, and if you keep coming back, your resilience, great. It is building character.
It definitely is.
Yes. Oh
One
my
of my
gosh.
mentors, one of the things he often says, doesn't matter if it's the most amazing thing that just happened or, the most detrimental thing happens.
Yeah.
His statement was always, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you could have the worst day. You know what? That's today. Tomorrow's a new day. And, if you hit that highest moment, achieve the goal, whatever it is, enjoy the moment.
It's
And tomorrow's a new day and you've got to do the descent to start the next climb for whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
kind of along that subject of, what's next, as you continue growing the Testimonial Collective, what excites you most about the future of your company and in the impact you want to make in the world?
Yeah. I think it's exciting now to see I've visualized expansion on a level that I don't think I could have in the beginning. And I know it will take time, but just the possibilities that have already presented themselves and I'm sure you guys have seen this as well, where you have a certain picture in your mind of how your business is going to go and the people you're going to serve and what you're going to do. And then through a series of events, you start realizing, oh, I could also do this, or we could do this way. And those are really exciting. Or when other business owners have come to me and said, hey, have you thought about this, or like founder stories or things like that, that things start to mesh. And then there's also been other companies that I have started to pair up with in certain ways that I didn't see possible before. And I was like, wow, I just having my eyes open to possibilities, that's really exciting because the potential there's endless. Also, having a family and being able to, even though entrepreneurship is wild, as we've said, being able to be in control if you need to go be with your sick kid
Yeah.
or deal with certain things. Like that to me, it doesn't matter how much money I bring in, that is priceless. That's why I'm
Mhm.
doing it.
Yeah.
And so when things like that have happened, it just reaffirms all those hard days that we talk about. Cause
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. So that's also in its own way exciting because it's like, yes, like this is what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
All right. Well, Emily, this was a really great conversation. To wrap this up, can you share with our audience how they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So my website is thetestimonialcollective.com, or you can email me directly at emily@thetestimonialcollective.com. We're actually just starting to get our socials going this month. So those will be up soon. But yeah.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm
Thanks so much
looking
for
forward.
having me. This is fantastic. I know I'd met you before, Kelly, but Sean, it's great to meet you and get the
Thank you.
full picture of you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to hopefully working with you in the future.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for being a guest. And I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Yeah.